we are going to start this off by talking about the Washington Commandos. That is right. The Commanders there, the Redskins / football team / they don't know what their name is. That's what we're figuring out.
Hey,
So
you can't say that. You can't say that.
What can I say?
You said an
Did I say the R word?
You did.
Oh no.
You did.
Oh no. Yes, the Washington Redskins for what they were known for a long time with no issues until somebody decided that it wasn't right. But yeah, I don't know, man. From what I've read and seen, it's tough to know the exact nature of it. But I'm from my understanding, a lot of the Native Americans actually liked it and did not have an issue with it. So we'll see. Honestly, I hope they bring it back because it's got a lot of history. And although I do not like any team in the NFC East other than my Giants, seeing these name changes or stuff, the commies and the football team was just awful. So I hope they go back to the Redskins, but if not, something better than whatever trash that is. But let's talk about their major losses in addition. So getting to the free agency side of things, we had quarterback Sam Howell, starting quarterback last year. A bit of a surprise to me, giving up on him 1 year after you drafted him. Going to the Seahawks. Running back Antonio Gibson, writing was on the wall there, going to the Patriots. Wide receiver Curtis Samuel going to the Bills. Tight end Logan Thomas going to the 49ers. A couple offensive linemen who were pretty trash anyway. And cornerback Kendall Fuller, pretty good player there, going to Miami. They did, there's a lot of roster turnover with this team. Obviously, they were 4-13, so that's, probably a good thing. Not a very good team last year. Probably their biggest addition outside of the draft is running back Austin Eckler, at least in the fantasy space. A couple good linemen in Biotish and Allegretti. Allegretti, for those that don't know, who we'll talk about a little bit later here, coming off an injury. But, he did step in for Joe Thuney for the Kansas City Chiefs at guard there and played very well in the Super Bowl. He was a backup, but he could have been a starter on just about any other team there. A couple edge rushers in Fowler and Armstrong who should be starters. And some starters in the linebacking core, and Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu and Jeremy Chin. Louvu and Chin both coming from Carolina there. And then, of course, the quarterback of potentially the future for this team, quarterback Jaden Daniels here, who I think is gonna really determine the ceiling and floor for this team. They did bring in Zach Ertz as well, who's slotted at tight end 1, but we'll see how long he lasts on his old legs. All right, what are the big takeaways here?
Yeah, so to me, I mean, kind of like you mentioned, like it was somewhat surprising for them to move on from Sam Howell. I mean, is Sam Howell a top 10, top 15 quarterback in the NFL? Probably not, but like at the same time, like he's a young dude. He showed that he is a gunslinger. He could put up some stats.
Yeah.
Like I said, it was kind of interesting them switching off as bad as that defense is. Like, they probably could have gotten a pretty good chunk of draft picks for that number 2 overall pick and really tried to bolster that really very poor, worst defense in the league. But at the same time, like if you have the chance to get a Heisman winning quarterback, like pretty hard to pass that up.
Yeah. I mean, it's a quarterback league, right?
Yep.
It is. I agree, though. I think the Howell thing was a little interesting. You just drafted him. At least keep him as a backup for a year. I can't exactly remember what they got for him. It's not like they got anything crazy for him. But I think the offense has potential to be a little bit fun. What are we thinking there?
Yeah, I mean, Austin Eckler, like you said, big addition there in the running back room. They still have Brian Robinson as well. So it'll be interesting to see how they end up splitting carries. Definitely a couple upgrades on the offensive line. Again, much needed additions there. They did bring in a bunch of defensive guys in free agency. Some of them are getting up there in age, so we'll see how much of a difference they make on the defensive side. But at the end of the day, like you said, they were 4-13 last year.
Yeah,
they have to do something.
Yeah,
they do have some pretty good skill players on the offensive side of the ball. They got a pretty good wide receiver room. Tight ends a question to me.
Yeah,
I think the wide receiver room's still. I think has shown glimpses that it can.
Yeah.
It can
I mean,
McLaurin's
I
still there. He's a stud. Jahan Dotson. We'll see how he ends up.
yeah. I
But
think McLaurin is definitely a dude, and then we'll talk about that a little later. He's definitely a guy that's shown consistently that he can be a wide receiver one. I think outside of him, though, I do have some questions. But before we get into that, let's talk injuries. Let's talk major injuries that are going to be affecting this team heading into the 2024 season. We'll start with a couple linebackers in Jamin Davis, young player from Kentucky, I believe. Injured himself late in the year, December 14th. Picked up a shoulder injury, required surgery. They didn't say exactly what, whether it's the AC joint or based on the recovery timeline, likely something more AC as opposed to rotator cuff. But he's got a 4 to 6 month recovery timeline, and he's got 8.5 months until week 1. Any concerns there for Jamin Davis?
No, I really don't think I have any concerns for him. Like you said,
Mm-hmm.
if it was an AC joint kind of a thing, this usually is a bigger issue with quarterbacks that are constantly using that arm, constantly going above their head for certain things. Wide receivers sometimes, but most of the time, if you're not a quarterback, AC joints, you can play through those. And like you said, timeline wise, he should be in the clear.
Yep. So something similar injury to a la Anthony Richardson, but less concerning there because he's not going to have to make that throwing overhead motion repeatedly, hundreds of times. And then another guy, Frankie Louvu, just wanted to mention him. Minor ankle injury they picked up about a couple weeks ago in mini camp or OTAs, one of those around the 12th of June. That's really, if they're calling it a minor ankle injury, it's probably a low ankle sprain, probably something like 2 to 3 weeks. He should be fine. I would expect him back by training camp in late July there. He's got 3 months until the season, so no real concerns for him. Now, someone who, maybe a little bit more of a pause. We talked about Nick Allegretti coming from Kansas City, offensive guard there, a guy who has shown starting capability, although being a backup there in Kansas City just because they've had a really good offensive line. So he tore his UCL in his elbow, his ulnar collateral ligament in his elbow. He actually tore it on the Super Bowl. He tore it in the second quarter, I believe, and played the entire game with it torn. He got it. He got out there. The trainers basically told him, look, shit's torn. You're going to need surgery anyway. So they just kind of try to wrap it up and just see if he could fight through it. And he did. He played actually pretty damn well. So that was shout out to him, man, because that is not fucking easy to do.
No doubt.
That's obviously a lot of adrenaline. It's a lot of, hey, I've worked my whole life to become a Super Bowl champion. But to come out there, not only to just have the, passion to get out there, but to actually produce and not fall behind against a pretty good pass rush in the 49ers. Shout out to you, Nick Allegretti. Now, about a 6 to 9 month recovery timeline where they can actually be productive on the field. He's got about 7 months until the season starts. So we're getting a little close to that timeline. What are we thinking here?
No, like you said, I think it might be a slight concern, maybe bring you a little bit of pause, but at the same time, like linemen, again, we're going back to quarterbacks, like linemen aren't putting a ton of stress like on the inside part of their elbow where that UCL joint is. That's that Tommy John ligament that you usually hear about with pitchers and sometimes quarterbacks. They're not putting nearly as much torque on the inside part of their elbow as those throwing athletes. So I'm not too concerned. The Washington Commanders offensive line sucks. And he's going to be an improvement. I would almost assume that he starts week 1.
Put a brace on it and see
exactly. He's probably going to have one of those almost like upper extremity knee type braces that you see offensive linemen wear all the time on their knees. But yeah, I think he should be perfectly fine going into the season.
Yeah, just a guy I want to keep an eye on going into training camp because he's so important to that team. We talked about he would be a massive upgrade at that position, but obviously he's got to be healthy, right? So if he has any type of setback or, hey, even with the brace, it's just, it can be stressed with playing offensive line, playing against really heavy dudes, trying to move them out of the way. Like Derek said, it's not something you'd expect, as much as a pitcher or somebody with a lot of throwing to be putting on it. But, still football is a dangerous game. So just something I want to keep an eye on, but you're right. I do at this point expect him to be out there week 1. All right. We are going to talk about some concerns that we had for this team. We talked about a little bit on the takeaways, but a Couple things you brought up already. Worst defense in the NFL last year. Now they did obviously bring in a lot on the both defensive line, the linebacking core, and the safety position. I have some questions on their secondary with Forbes and St. Juste on the corner and Derek Forrest. I think Jeremy Chin is a good player, but linebackers I think are pretty strong, and so is their defensive line. So I think they'll definitely be an improved unit there, but we got to see how that back end. And the rookie starting on the left tackle, Brandon Coleman, rookie out of TCU, 3rd round pick this year. He is their starting left tackle. How do you feel about that?
It brings me a little bit of concern, just with, especially with the pass rush in this division. The Cowboys have always, or at least have late, had a very good pass rush. It sounds like the Giants should have a much better pass rush. The Eagles have had a solid pass rush. So it definitely brings me a little concern with the lack of experience, especially with a rookie quarterback. But, we'll see. It'll be interesting. I think the defense is still probably the biggest concern to me, especially that secondary. Like you said, their defensive line has been pretty good, even after trading away Montez Sweat. They still have Daron Payne. They still have Jonathan Allen there. So I think, it all comes down to, will that secondary hold up? And really, will that offensive line hold up for Jaden Daniels? Because we know him down at LSU, he's a playmaker. He's
dynamic. Yeah.
He's absolutely dynamic. But the Washington Commanders, to me, are almost like a poor man's Chicago going into the season, right? Both Chicago and the Commanders obviously have rookie quarterbacks. They have some decent skill positions. Is their offensive line going to hold up? Obviously, Chicago probably has a better defense at this point than Washington, who gave up 30 or over 30 points a game.
They were that bad? Holy shit! Yeah.
They I think it was like 30 point something. But anyways, the defense has to be a little bit better. Offensively, I think that Jaden Daniels is an upgrade from Sam Howell. But it all comes down to Jaden Daniels, just as it does with Caleb Williams in Chicago.
Yeah, no, I like that comparison, and I like the poor man's caveat to it too, because I do think the Bears are a bit further along than this Commanders team. But no, I like those similarities that you brought up there. The other thing for me that I talk about real quick is the pass catchers outside of McLaurin for me are a big question mark. You do have Eckler coming out of the backfield. That is a plus as far as Antonio Gibson kind of played that role. I do think Eckler is better. How much better is still to be seen at his age. Jahan Dotson is someone who has, fantasy guys fall in love with him every year. He has all this potential, and, he's put up two seasons of about 500 yards for a starting wide receiver. Nothing to write home about. And then Luke McCaffrey is an interesting slated at the wide receiver 3 slot. Obviously, in the blood potentially, but he's just not the same guy. I think he played at Rice University, if I'm not mistaken. He's just not the same caliber as his brother. We'll see. He definitely has some potential, but not anyone I'm projecting to really have such a breakout season. And then the tight end position, Zach Ertz. I faded Zach Ertz last year, old guy coming off an ACL. Obviously, he's not coming off a major injury, but I just think he's past his prime. But what I will say, just similarly like he opened the door for Trey McBride out there in Arizona. Ben Sinnott is a guy coming from Kansas State that, I do see him as more of a, I would say maybe like a poor man's George Kittle, someone who likes to block and is going to smile at you as they pancake you into the ground, as opposed to somebody like Trey McBride, who's a little bit more on the receiving end. But that could be an interesting situation there, fantasy wise, as far as what we see down the stretch of, I'm not expecting Zach Ertz to be a starter, halfway through the season.
Yeah, no, I kind of like that comparison as well. I think overall, like you said, the wide receiver position, it'll be interesting. Terry McLaurin is a stud. Jahan Dotson has shown quite a few glimpses, but he hasn't been real steady. He hasn't been super consistent. But yeah, I think it all comes down to, personally, does that offensive line hold up? Because Jaden Daniels can get outside the pocket. He can make some plays with his legs. I think coming into the league, he is more polished than guys that are absolute studs like Lamar Jackson, like a I don't know,
You talking like Kyler Murray, or what are you
maybe
talking?
Kyler Murray, maybe Josh
You
Allen,
you just think yeah. Oh, he's not as raw. He's not as
right,
raw.
exactly, or
Okay.
right, exactly. I think he has more arm talent than some of those guys, but he can still make plays with his legs.
Yeah, he's an older dude. Yeah, fifth year senior, I believe, coming out, playing at Arizona State, and then 2
And
years
who
at.
knows? Maybe he can get a hold of the 49ers and get his old buddy Ayuk over to
We'll
Washington.
see. Now I'm seeing, again, as of Saturday, June 29th, now everything's pointing Ayuk to the 49ers, like you were claiming for on our last NFC West episode. So,
Yeah.
we'll see what happens there, but that would change my opinion on this team.
Definitely.
All right. Another quick question for you, fantasy wise. You got
Yeah.
Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler right now. Eckler is listed on the depth chart as RB1, Brian Robinson RB2. I'm not really buying too much stock into that. But they're going around that RB30 range, both of them, 30-ish, depending on different sites. Who would you take? Let's say they were same spot in the draft. They were both available. Who are you taking at kind of a very similar ADP? Brian Robinson or
Yeah.
Austin Eckler?
Yeah. So I think it depends on what kind of league you're in. If it's a PPR league, I would probably lean Eckler because he is much better out of the backfield as a pass catcher. He's going to get some yards. He's going to get some receptions.
Yeah.
He's one of those guys that he gets 2 yards or 22.
Yeah.
Where Brian Robinson, he's a little bit more ground and pound. He's going to be most likely, historically, Austin Eckler isn't the can't stay healthy. If
I
I
mean,
will, it's so I think PPR leagues, I would probably lean Eckler just because of that pass catching ability.
yeah.
More of a traditional, I'd probably go Brian Robinson.
That's fair. I mean, yeah, and literally Eckler, talks about part of the reasons that he left the Chargers there is because they were trying to run him too much. I think I can't remember the exact quote, but it was essentially something like he wasn't trying to be like an every down back and just
That's
get
not
like
his
all these
game.
touches. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, and so that I would agree with that take. I do have Brian Robinson a little bit further ahead for me because I think he is going to be their true starter. I think he's going to get a lot of carries. I think if this team is smart, they lean into that, especially that new interior offensive line, that it should be improved. I think they should run the ball. You have a rookie quarterback. I think you help him out with a solid run game. So I would take Brian Robinson, but the PPR.
Now, here's a question for you. And this is more you just being an SEC guy. Can Jaden Daniels go under center and put Brian Robinson behind him? You know what I mean?
Good point. That's a good point. I mean, I can see it now. It's like a flashback just watching him run all over my Florida Gators last year. But yeah, I don't think he took a snap from under center. And now all these colleges, that's a good point. I mean, it's the NFL, maybe you better learn.
Yeah.
You better learn, right?
I would not be surprised if they put him in the pistol and do something like that. But
maybe, yeah.
I mean,
it'll
be an interesting.
That's a great point. That's a great point because we're talking about, a lot of people's main concern is his fragility as far as, he is a smaller guy. Now, I was talking about this on a guest spot I did, but recently, I think that it's hard to predict injury that way because you look at a guy like Tyler Lockett who takes care of himself and gets down. I think a lot of smaller frame guys. Yeah, I think they could look after that. There's nothing harm in that. Like, look, I don't want you to be running sideline to sideline, not going upfield and getting yards, but taking care of yourself, not trying to kill yourself for an extra 2 yards once you get the first down. I think Lockett does it well. I think more guys could learn to do that because you look at a guy like Anthony Richardson, who's a big ass dude. He is a big boy. He's not small framed, but he can't stay healthy. Because that's how he runs. He runs violent. He runs physical.
Which when Daniels was at LSU, he still ran that way, which is that concern. I think, if you look at some clips of him taking shots, like he's not running away from defenders, right? He's all for taking those hits. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see if he actually figures that out now that he's getting paid a little bit more.
Yeah, no, I like it. Yeah. That's a really good point that it's a valid concern, but I think it is a little bit hard to predict.
Yep,
all right, let's go ahead and get into our action, get into our best bets. Win total for them is sitting at 6.5, juice to the over there at -130. Again, they were 4-13 last year. What do you got for the people, brother? What is your best bet with this team?
Yeah, so I got a couple. One, I think Caleb Williams is getting a little bit too much hype up there in Chicago. Like I said, I do kind of see this Commanders team as a poor man's Chicago. And I like Jaden Daniels, because he's not
Okay.
yes, he is a more polished passer, but he's going to pick up some yards on you with the legs. So I actually like him to win the Rookie of the Year at plus 550.
Okay.
Because like I said, I think they do have some pretty good skill guys, and they're going to be behind in a lot of games. So he's gonna put up some stats.
He's gonna put up some stats, and if this team wins, it's gonna be because of him.
No
You
doubt.
can make the argument that if the Bears are successful, they play some pretty good defense. He's got way better weapons. How much are we gonna ask of Caleb Williams? So I think. I think he's going to put up more stats because his defense is worse.
And the last time we saw both of them play, who was the better quarterback? Jaden Daniels. I think going back to their college days, this last season, Jaden Daniels showed that he can put up some numbers against some big time competition. So it'll be interesting. But yeah, I really do like Jaden Daniels. I do like these Commanders to be improved. But at the same time, I don't fully trust them too much against their division foes, especially. So I do like them to go under 2.5 division wins at minus 105 as well.
Okay.
I think that 6.5 is tricky. But I do like them to at least sneak a couple, maybe one, maybe two in the division, but I don't think they're going to take out the Cowboys twice. I don't think they're going to take out the Eagles twice. The Giants, maybe.
You better watch your mouth. You better watch your damn mouth, all right? If there's one thing Daniel Jones know how to do, it's beat the fucking Commanders. But no, I like it, man. I like the Rookie of the Year pick and then the under 2.5 division wins. I thought that win total was tricky at 6.5. I kind of see them right around, the 6 to 7 wins this year too. Yeah. All right. For me, I only had one pick for these little Washington Commanders here. I'm going to go with wide receiver Terry McLaurin over 900.5 receiving yards at minus 110 each way. Look, he's hit this every season he's been in the league. He played all 17 games the past 3 years. He's a guy who consistently stays on the field, and he's the best wide receiver option for a quarterback that potentially could be dynamic, right? I think, I almost wish I could find some lines on this because I think he has a really solid year, putting up something like 12 to 1,300 yards, and he's going to stay on the field enough to make this happen. But I think over 900.5, I'm not really sure why that is so low. Again,
honestly, I think that comes back to, is Jaden Daniels going to stay healthy? And can you trust, I think they brought in Mariota behind him.
Mariota. Mariota. That's a good call. Yeah, that might be baked into that, but still, I mean, he's played with some pretty shitty quarterbacks over his time, and he's hit this number every year. So I just think he's the best option, clearly by far on the entire offense, really. But they'll mix in the running game. I think he's your alpha on the outside. So give me McLaurin over 900.5 receiving yards again at the minus 110.